Hey guys, here are my 10 cards, 1 kit for the Love from Lizi May 2018 card kit. Jumping right into card 1, I'm taking the stamp from the stamp set and just kind of stamping a little collage of this leaf. I'm stamping off to kind of get a different tone or lightness of color. This does kind of look messy. It really wasn't the look I was going for, but this kit was all about just going with it. There were several times where I kind of was like, ugh, I don't like this, but I kept going and it all worked out well. I went ahead and attached a piece of ribbon to the top, the kind of middle. And then I love this toucan die. I love it. So I just die cut that out in black and adhered that down with some Stampin' Dimensionals. And I'm taking these 2 pieces that I fussy cut out. I'm using this Bird Banter stamp set. The stamp set that comes in the kit is totally fine, has a couple sentiments, but I had this stamp set that went really well with birds. So this is just a little toucan of my appreciation. So I really wanted to kind of bring that in as well. And I go ahead and attach these leaves that I fussy cut out by the toucan, and that completes card 1. Card 2, I'm taking the same stamp and stamping it off in 2 different colors. Kind of to the right corner to the top is what I was going for. This is a border stamp and I just chopped it up because I wanted that little leaf stamp, not the whole border. And later on I do cut off a flower on that same border stamp. If I wanted to use it as a border, I just butt those 2 pieces I cut off together and it works perfectly fine. Don't be afraid to cut up your stamps. I was when I first started stamping, but I'm like, you know what? Sometimes you can get a lot further with the stamp if you cut it. So why not? Go ahead and trim off, just slice it, and I wanted a little bit of this yellow peeking out. So go ahead and stamp thank you and then attach my 2 pieces of white cardstock that I had stamped on to this yellow card base. And I believe that thank you stamp is from the Bird Banter. I sell my cards on Etsy most of the time. I mean, that's the majority of where my cards end up because I make so many and I just don't have that many people to send it to, nor the money to pay all the postage to send them. So I do sell my cards. So when I make a card, I really try to keep it generic and I don't want the sentiments to be too personal. And I want it to be a card that I could sell where it's not too out of the box or too, not that out of the box or original is bad, but I just try to keep it pretty generic, if that makes sense. I went ahead and added gold peel-offs because I thought it was a little bit plain, and that really dressed it up nicely, and that would be card 2. Sorry I'm going kind of fast. These videos are typically pretty fast. If you do click the gear button, you can slow it down. I don't know if that makes me sound like a turtle, but it's right below the video on the right-hand side. So this is my favorite card, card 3. I love that pattern paper. I cut it at a diagonal, adhered it to my white card base, and then I'm taking a gold peel off and I attach that. And then I am taking another stamp set from a different stamp set. And I go ahead and attach that. I had a bunch of these white circle die cuts that I die cut out a long time ago, so I pull those in. But it's just a simple circle die that I use to cut those out. I fussy cut all these leaf images out, and then I'm going to go ahead and adhere them to the card. I just stamped a bunch out, and then I'll fussy cut them as I go. And I attach them around a sentiment. I love this card so much. It's my favorite. I may actually have to keep this one. Go in and here all those leaves, and then I take the wood little flowers and attach those with the glue dot and a Stampin' Dimensional because the sentiment is popped up, so I wanted it to lay flush. These flowers have quite a bit of dimension, so I don't know necessarily I would mail this card, but I would definitely hand it to someone in person. And then these pretty little gold leaves, add a couple of those with the glue dots. These glue dots you see are left over from a paper pumpkin kit from Stampin' Up. I have a ton of them. I'm trying to work my way through them. I get a lot of questions about where did you get those dots? I hate them, to be honest. I like glue dots on a roll. So that completes that card. Again, my favorite. Love that one. For card 4, again, this is another one where I'm like, I'm just going with it because it was a hot mess. But it does turn out fine. Excuse me. So I'm stamping in Versamark. I'm going to heat emboss with that gold embossing powder that came in the kit. The gold embossing powder is fine detail embossing powder. So I did do some sentiments later on. Worked perfectly. It's always tricky with embossing powder, but if it is fine, which this is, you can do sentiments with it and you won't get a big old gloppy mess. So I've stamped out the hibiscus. I'm going to heat emboss it with the gold embossing powder. And then I'm going to take, and I'm just showing you it heating up. It's lovely. I did make a big old mess, so I have to come back and add this leaf image. And I'm going to, again, emboss that in gold. This is the smaller leaf image from that border stamp that I cut off. And again, stamping it, and then I will heat emboss it here. And then dump my embossing powder back in the little pot. And then I wanted to show you how the stencil works. So I'm using, I believe this is red brick distress ink, and I'm just coloring in the stencil. You have to be careful because there's not much space between the edge of your stenciled image and the other stencil. So I did get out of the lines a little bit. But to line this up, it's extremely easy. There is a name on the stamp set. I'm sorry, the stencil. It says Love from Lizi, Tropical. I'm not sure exactly. But it's real light. If you find that, make sure it's right side up. And then the top of the hibiscus is how you line it up. I don't know if that makes any sense, but very easy to line up. And I'm just dabbing the ink, and you can tell I got out of the line a little bit. No biggie. So here I'm like, okay, trying to line up the middle piece of the hibiscus. Well, if you can't line it up, flip it over. So once I flip it over, boom, there it is. Right there. So this exactly wasn't that great of an idea, but I did it anyway. This paper was okay with ink blending. It came in the kit. It was the thinner white. It necessarily isn't the best, but it worked totally fine. It's just I was trying not to get this, I think this is evergreen bough. I was trying not to get it in the flower. I didn't care about the smaller image going over it because you couldn't tell the difference anyway. So I was trying to be very careful. It got really inky. I did get some green in the flowers a little bit, but again, I was just going with it. I'm like, to emboss takes time, so I am not going to check this card. So here I'm trying to go through and kind of smooth out some edges. There was no smoothing it out. If you do this, what I would suggest is getting one of those finger ink daubers and using that, because that embossing tool was the sponge was so big that it's almost impossible not to get color where you don't want it. So I did not like that middle piece where the ink is not blended out too well, but no big deal. I go ahead and stamp a sentiment, and this stamp does not come in the kit. It's from my stash. And I am heat embossing it. I will list the stamp sets I used, but like I said, the ones that come in the stamp set, that I think there are several, are totally fine. But when I make a card, again, I make it with selling it in mind. So, you know, use what you have to bring it to your kit. I try to only stick to what's in the kit, but sometimes I do like to bring in different sentiments. Because if you are watching this and you make cards, you're going to bring in what you have. So I go ahead and just pop some ribbon, and then I attach my sentiment to a gold paper that came in the kit. I went ahead and busted out another pelican, not a pelican, a toucan, and kind of placed that there where I think I want it. I cut the small flower from the border stamp, and I fussy cut it out. And I'm going to go ahead and adhere it to this corner. I kind of was trying to make this card a little bit more busy to kind of hide the fact that my ink blending wasn't the best. So even though I felt like the card was a big old hot mess, here I'm adding sparkly Nouveau Sparkle pen, whatever it's called, for some sparkles to those flowers. Even though I don't think the card was the best at first, the end result's totally fine. So for card 5, I kept this one simple. I used I believe this is Lawn Fawn. It's just a stitch border die, hill border, I don't know what it's called, but Lawn Fawn stitched border die. I cut out 2 pieces from white cardstock. I'm going to go ahead and stamp out my sentiment. I love that pattern paper. Sorry, I bumped the camera. But I love that pattern paper, so I definitely wanted to feature it where, you know, it wasn't too busy. The paper was the main focus. So I adhere, after stamping my sentiment, I adhere that pattern paper, trim it up, and then I'm going to pop up the bottom piece and the top piece of that white cardstock with some Stampin' Dimensionals, and then adhere it to my card. And again, just a little toucan of my appreciation. I love that. I had to use that stamp with those toucan paper images. Trim it up again, and that's pretty much it. I kept this card pretty simple. I was thinking about adding sequins. I didn't. So that is it. This isn't a card, but I'm just showing you how I stamped out 6 of the hibiscus heat embossed lemon gold, and I'm just going over with I think it's red brick, distress ink, and I'm going to fussy cut these out, and I'll bring them in every so often for a few cards. But I just wanted to show you that this is a great way to color your images as well. So I wanted to try something different. Again, I'm just going with it. And I brought in this piece of gold that came in the kit, the little hole punch sequin leftover bits, whatever you call this. And I had to use some of that Nouveau paste. It's beautiful. Oh my gosh, I love it. I had to get full size of every single color. It's gorgeous. And so I'm like, I'm going to use a little piece as a stencil. Well, it kind of was a big old mess. But I'm like, whatever. Just going to keep going. That pattern paper is thinner. So it can warp your paper a little bit. It does not take long to dry. I did hit it with a heat tool. That's why it warped for the most part. But once I get everything down, it's dry, and I kind of push it down so it adheres to that tape adhesive. It's totally fine. So I cut out a gold oval stitch shape, and with the gold paper that came in the kit, adhered that down, added again another toucan, and then here are those flowers I just ink blended, fussy cut out, and I go ahead and attach or adhere 3 of them around the toucan piece. I've already heat embossed my sentiment on some black cardstock with the same gold embossing powder that came in the kit, so you can see that it stamps out perfectly. It's You're the Kind of Friend that I'd share a branch with, I believe is what it says. From the same stamp set as that Bird Banter stamp set. Go ahead, I'm going to attach that below the hibiscus. And then, is that it, I believe? No. I add a couple of the gold peel-offs to the left, just to kind of give it a little something. This card has a nice texture to it. I like it a lot. Even though my stenciling was not the best, it totally looks fine. So that is it for that card. For card 7, I'm taking this punch I have, and this can be done with any shapes. Circles, squares, rectangles, triangles, whatever. But I have the punch, and I love punches because they're just boom, boom, done. You don't have to run it through anything. So I'm using some of this kind of a dark gold, copper, mossy green specialty paper that came in the kit, and I pulled out the butterfly pattern paper, and I just punched a bunch of those shapes, and then I adhered them. I adhered them with glue adhesive. I'm going to take a piece of this gold holy thing. I don't know what it's called. I'm horrible. And I just cut a piece, and I'm going to pop it up there on top of that piece of pattern paper I had adhered already in the center. And then I had stamped out the sentiment, heat embossed it in the gold embossing powder, and then I just cut it out with that same punch. I kind of wanted it to match. I like this card, but I kind of covered up the center of what I did. So, you know, I don't know if I would necessarily do it the same, but I do really like the way this card looks. Take one of those hibiscus again, adhere that, and then I adhere a couple of the leaf images with glue dots. And then I do add one of these flowers. I really like these flowers. They just added a special touch to the cards. It looks really good. And that completes card 7. For card 8, I've taken one of these circle pieces I've had left over from a long time ago. I went ahead and stamped out a sentiment that says hello there. Adhere this polka dot foiled cardstock I cut out with a rectangle stitch die. You get a full sheet of that polka dot paper. It's really pretty. Take some of the ribbon. I'm going to adhere a piece across the stripe to match the cardstock perfectly. And I adhere that with glue dots. I'm going to trim the ends. And then I'm going to add this piece, which I cut out with a rectangle stitch die, like the next size down from the polka dots. Pop those up with dimensionals and adhere that in the center. And then I've already tied a bow with this ribbon, and I just add a ton of glue dots to make sure it's secure and attach it right there. And then I attach my sentiment, and then of course I have another toucan. I was making these cards, I'm like, really need to stop using the toucan. Every card's gonna have that. So I go ahead and attach that. I just adhere it flat with glue dots, and then I take this flower and adhere that as well. You can color these flowers. If you have alcohol markers, you can color them any color you like. I like the natural wood color, so I just left it, but I did bring in that Nouveau glitter pen again, and I just kind of sparkled it up. Now I'm adhering these with glue dots. I will have to see if those actually work and adhere nicely. Multimedia matte may be better, but so far so good. So I wanted to really make a masculine card, really simple and quick. So I took a big piece of that gold cardstock, gold foil, gold mirrored cardstock that came in the kit, cut it to 5.5 by 4.25, and then I adhered it to my card base. And then I'm taking a piece of fun foam right here, and I'm going to use double-sided tape to adhere it to my card panel, which is this piece of pattern paper that's beautiful and perfect for a masculine card. Adhere that down, and then I am going to take this stamp, which coordinates with that punch I was using, and I'm going to heat emboss this stamp. This is to a classy kind of guy, I believe. And then I will punch that out. And then I have this piece of black cardstock and a piece of gold cardstock. And I'm just going to create a little strip here. Adhere that to my card. And then I will take my sentiment and adhere that in the center. Really simple, quick card, but I think it would be great for a man. And if you don't have this punch or shape, you can always do a circle, a square, whatever. I just wanted to try something different. For card 10, this card was really quick. I was kind of like out of ideas at this point. I had pretty much sat down and did all these cards in 2 sessions. Most of, I think 6 of them were in 1 session. So by the time I got to this last one, I was like, okay, I'm spent. So I love this pattern paper. I went ahead and adhered that. I stamped the Why Thank You again, attached that to some gold mirror cardstock. And again, I brought in these 2 hibiscus that I did earlier that I fussy cut out, and that's where I wanted to adhere them. They tie in with the gold circle behind the sentiment. Go ahead and adhere those. And then I hadn't used the Nuvo drops that came in the kit yet. So I busted those out and I added a whole bunch of Nuvo drops. The color is beautiful and you can see the color, but with the Jewel Nuvo drops, they do dry translucent. So you'll have a slight tint, but if you're looking for that color, you're not going to have that. So just keep that in mind. Here is all the supplies I have left over. Ton of paper left over. The embossing powder, the sequins I didn't even get to, the Nuvo glitter paste, which is beautiful. I highly recommend that. Tags, ribbon, stencils, that wonderful die, these little pieces, pipe cleaner, dig it in my box, and the stamp set. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun to work with, and surprisingly the cards came pretty easy to me. I have a big long to-do list, so I'm like, ugh, I need to get my card making mojo in full gear, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what your favorite card was. I always love hearing that to kind of see what your taste is. And stay tuned for the rest of the design team for their cards. The kit is still available as of doing this voiceover, so please go check it out using my link below. Your support is appreciated. I do have affiliated links, so I do receive a small percentage if you do make a purchase. So please know that it is appreciated. Thank you for all the likes, the comments, the support. Like I said, means a ton. So stay tuned for more, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.